So Trump was in Milwaukee last night giving a speech on law and order and riots and African Americans and crime and jobs and all this stuff. When I read the story on it, I think I actually read the story in a conservative outlet too. I wasn't overly impressed. Then I listened to a little bit of it and I said, okay, that sounds a little better than I thought it was going to be. But then I just let the thing run and I listened to all of it. Thought I was just going to yank out a couple of excerpts, but the part where he talks about crime and race in Milwaukee, the first 10, 12 minutes of the speech I think are worthwhile, so I'll just leave it here for you guys. And when he's done, why don't we take a look at what the speech said, what it really means, what was good, what was bad, what was futile, what was worthwhile, and see if we can make some sense out of it.
Let me begin by thanking law enforcement officers here in this city and across this country for their service and sacrifice in difficult times. The violence, riots, and destruction that have taken place in Milwaukee is an assault on the right of all citizens to live in security and to live in peace. Law and order must be restored. It must be restored for the sake of all, but most especially for the sake of those living in the affected communities, of which there are many. The main victims of these riots are law-abiding African-American citizens living in these neighborhoods. It's their job, it's their homes, it's their schools and communities which will suffer the most as a result. There's no compassion in tolerating lawless conduct for anyone. Crime and violence is an attack on the poor and will never be accepted in a Trump administration. The narrative has been pushed aggressively for years, and now by our current administration and pushed by my opponent, Hillary Clinton, you know, is a totally false one. You know that. The problem in our poorest communities is not that there are too many police. The problem is that there are not enough police. More law enforcement, more community engagement, more effective policing is what our country needs desperately. Just like Hillary Clinton is against the minors, she is against the police, believe me. You know it and I know it, and guess what? She knows it. Those peddling the narrative of cops as a racist force in our society, a narrative supported with a nod by my opponent, shared directly in the responsibility for the unrest in Milwaukee and many other places within our country. They have fostered the dangerous anti-police atmosphere in America and all throughout America. Every time we rush to judgment with false facts and narratives, whether in Ferguson or in Baltimore, and foment further unrest, we do a direct disservice to poor African-American residents who are hurt by the high crime in their community. A big, unfair problem. During the last 72 hours, while protesters have raged against the police here in Milwaukee, another 9 were killed in Chicago, and another 46 were wounded. More than 2,600 people have been shot in Chicago since the beginning of the year, and almost 4,000 people killed in President Obama's hometown area since his presidency began. Not too good, that's for sure. So how are we serving these American victims? By attacking law enforcement officers. The war on our police must end, and it must end now. Thank you. The war on police is a war on all peaceful citizens who want to be able to work and live and send their kids to school in safety. Our job is not to make life more comfortable for the rioter or the robber or the looter or the violent disruptor, of which there are many. Our job is to make life more comfortable for the African-American parent who wants their kids to be able to safely walk the streets and walk to school, or the senior citizen waiting for a bus, or the young child walking home from school. For every one violent protester, there are 100 moms and dads and kids on the same city block who just want to be able to sleep safely at night. They want safety. My opponent, Hillary, would rather protect the offender than the victim. Big problem in our society. Hillary Clinton-backed policies are responsible for the problems in the inner cities today, and a vote for her is a vote for another generation of poverty, high crime, and lost opportunities. I care too much about my country to let this happen. Thank you. The fact is, we all care too much about our country to let this happen. Good policing saves lives. My wonderful friend, who you just heard, Rudy Giuliani, knows a thing or two about this. He's done an amazing job. The policies put into place by Rudy ultimately brought down crime by 76% and murder by 84% in New York. Think of how many families were saved, how much heartache was prevented when police were put into communities and criminals were automatically and systematically removed. Imagine how many lives could have been saved all across this country if Democratic politicians hadn't blocked in their cities what Rudy did in New York City. I'll make sure we deliver safe neighborhoods here in Milwaukee, and Milwaukee has got so many problems, so many problems. The world is watching right here in Milwaukee, but also across the country. It's easy for Hillary Clinton to turn a blind eye to crime when she has her own private security force that, by the way, carries guns, Second Amendment. I believe all Americans, not just the powerful, are entitled to security. Hillary Clinton has had her chance. She's failed at so many things, almost everything she's done. Now it's time for new leadership. The Hillary Clinton agenda hurts poor people by far the most. There is no compassion in allowing drug dealers, gang members, and felons to prey on innocent people. It is the first duty of government to keep the innocent safe, and when I'm president, I will fight for the safety of every American, and especially those Americans who have not known safety for a very, very long time. I'm asking for the vote of every African-American citizen struggling in our country today who wants a different and much better future. It's time for our society to address some honest and very, very difficult truths. The Democratic Party has failed and betrayed the African American community. Democratic crime policies, education policies, and economic policies have produced only more crime, more broken homes, and more poverty. Thank you. Let us look at the situation right here in Milwaukee, a city run by Democrats for decade after decade. Last year, killings in this city increased by 69%, plus another 634 victims of non-fatal shootings. 18 to 29-year-olds accounted for nearly half of the homicide victims. The poverty rate here is nearly double the national average. Almost 4 in 10 African-American men in Milwaukee between the ages of 25 and 54 do not have a job. Nearly 4 in 10 single-mother households are living in poverty. 55 public schools in the city have been rated as failing to meet expectations, despite $10,000 in funding per pupil, which is a very, very high number. There's only a 60% graduation rate, and it's one of the worst public school systems anywhere in the country. 1 in 5 manufacturing jobs has disappeared in Milwaukee since we fully opened our markets, and you understand what that means. We opened these markets to China, and many African-American neighborhoods have suffered. We opened our markets, they've taken our jobs, they give us our products that we don't make anymore, and African-American neighborhoods, along with many other neighborhoods, have suffered greatly. To every voter in Milwaukee, to every voter living in the inner city, or every forgotten stretch of our society, I'm running to offer you a much better future, a much better job. And a much higher wage. Thank you. Thank you. The Democratic Party has taken the votes of African Americans for granted. They've just assumed they'll get your support and done nothing in return for it. They've taken advantage of the African American citizen. It's time to give the Democrats some competition for these votes, and it's time to rebuild the inner cities of America and to reject the failed leadership of a rigged political system. And that's what it is. It's a rigged system. Jobs, safety, opportunity, fair and equal representation. We reject the bigotry of Hillary Clinton, which panders to and talks down to communities of color and sees them only as votes. That's all they care about, not as individual human beings worthy of a better future. They have taken advantage. She doesn't care at all about the hurting people of this country or the suffering she has caused them, and she, meaning she and her party officials. There has been tremendous suffering because of what they have brought. To every lawbreaker hurting innocent people in this country, I say, your free reign will soon come crashing to an end.
Okay, so here's what you might not know if just from listening to this speech. The Democrats have spent the last year devoting 20-30% of their time just talking about racism, about white racism. They're talking about how black people are victims of white racism. They're talking about how cops are always picking on black people for no reason whatsoever. Republicans have not been engaged in this for reasons of their own. Think about all those debates with all those people up there. I mean, very, very seldom do we hear anything about what's happening with black people. And now, it's kind of like now that we're getting into the meat of the campaign, the Democrats are going to be hammering Trump and his surrogates with this. I just don't know if they're going to be up for it. Listen, this speech was fine, okay? It was fine. I mean, I like the stuff he said about the cops. I like the stuff he said about law and order. All good. But we have to also recognize this. This is the identical speech that Republican candidates have been giving for the last 30 years. It's it's like, hey, black people, you don't know what's good for you, and we do. The Democrats don't. We'll give you better jobs. We'll give you more free stuff. We'll give you a better deal. This year is different. And it's different because the things that were bad 4 years, 8 years, 12 years ago are now worse. This year, I don't see Republicans really acknowledging how race is a central organizing feature for many, many black people that you seldom see in any white people. I mean, come on, they listen to black music, black TV, black radio. They go to black schools, black funeral homes, black churches. This is a big deal to them. And part of that racial consciousness is the feeling that they are relentless victims of relentless white racism. That is so deep-seated. I don't see these guys prepared to address that or even change it. And so I don't know, when they're sitting around a room and they decide they're going to give a speech like this, I don't know if they really think to themselves, hey, all we got to do is go out there and tell black people we're better for them than Hillary and they'll be fine. I don't know if that's the way they think. Or maybe they're just saying, listen, let's just go give a speech. Let's pat a few black people on the head. And maybe we can at least convince some of them to stay home on election day. Maybe that's the best they can hope for. But I don't see any acknowledgement from any of these guys running for president, any of the Republican candidates or any of their surrogates or any of the senators. I don't see any acknowledgement when they talk about Milwaukee or Ferguson or St. Louis or Baltimore or these enormous episodes of black mob violence and Black Lives Matter. I don't see any acknowledgement of how the Obama administration from top to bottom sees everything through the lens of race. Everything. Got a problem with the environment? That's environmental racism. You got a problem with the Department of Justice? Oh, there are so many black people in prison that don't belong there. I mean, it's crazy. What are they all doing there? How did they get there? We got to get them out. Because everybody knows that, white people commit crime too. This is not fringe stuff that we hear on street corners. This is the talk we get from the Attorney General and the President of the United States. We got problems in black schools. Oh, that's easy. Too many white teachers. Too much disparity between black students and white students in education and in discipline. Oh yeah, black students and white students do the same thing, but white students are always getting away with it. Black students are always getting punished. We could go down the list. How about the military? The military academies teach white supremacy. They teach white privilege. They teach critical race theory. That black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. That explains why you, white military guys sitting at West Point, that explains why there's a whole bunch more white people here than black people. So these guys, the Obama people, are all about race all the time. That's their main focus. I really don't see any Republicans giving me a sign that they recognize that. And I don't see anybody giving me a sign that if they win this election, they are going to start dismantling this whole racial grievance industry that is doing so much damage, causing so many people to think so many crazy thoughts, causing so much violence. I mean, we saw the videos from Milwaukee the other night. That wasn't unusual. It's not unusual for black people to sit out there and go, oh yeah, if that's a white person, let's beat the hell out of them. We've got a gajillion of those videos. So white people will sit here and we'll look inside of ourselves for that one little molecule of racism that we haven't scraped away yet. And we'll spend a lot of time thinking about it, trying to get rid of it. Black people are not having that inner discussion. They're pretty much embraced their inner racism. A lot of black people, if they were going to write a book about it, the book would be called "Where Black People Are Not Really That Into You, White Person." And we see this racial animosity, we see this racial resentment, and more, turning into pure hatred. We see it in the mainstream media all the time now. We see it on CNN, MSNBC, NPR. I keep a little internal stopwatch now. Whenever I turn on NPR, if I'm in my car listening to it at night, I just as soon as I start listening, I hit the stopwatch. I want to see how long it's going to take for somebody to bring up white racism and how white people are always keeping black people down. And I want to see how many. That's on the interviews where it's nominally not about race. A lot of the interviews are very explicitly about race. I listened to a story the other day on NPR, a book review with Fresh Air with Terry Gross. A guy wrote a book about high stakes gambling a couple years ago. I remember the book. I read it. And so he writes a book now, a fiction book, about what if the Underground Railroad were really a railroad, and what if it were really underground. And so it's kind of a sci-fi book about slavery. But he and Terry Gross, two white liberals, but probably the same, age, same everything else, same outlook on life. They're just sitting there having this discussion about how terrible slavery was, and as if there's a group of people out there who kind of didn't know that, as if there's a group of people out there who think that was a pretty good thing. I'll tell you one thing you learn about when you write a book, when you get into the book racket. So I'm in these, you learn a lot about how books are sold, who reads them, who buys them. So I sell my books on Amazon and in some bookstores. It's all good. My books right now are selling like crazy. So thank all you guys. I get lots and lots of email from people who not only read it, but they got a copy for one of their relatives or a loved one. And it used to be for every 10 books somebody gave out, 9 would go, "I'm not reading that crap." Now it's like, one. Now it's like 1 to 1. It's like for every one person that says, "I'm not reading that racist crap," there's one person that says, "Hey, I read this book and it really opened my eyes." I'm starting to get a lot of that, and especially from this YouTube channel. A lot of people are saying, "Wow, that's really happening, isn't it?" But anyway, so when you think about the books that people write, and this kind of all goes back to the racial consciousness that I don't think Trump and his gang are fully aware of. I see these books that a lot of books no one's ever heard of, but they sell like crazy. It's the colleges. If you get into the college racket, if you can get some college professors, and they all go to the same conferences, right? They all go to the same conferences. They all go to meet the same booksellers, the same university. And if you can get your college professors to start, signing this book to his students, your book is going to look like everybody in America is reading it. And that's what I see so I'm even beating a lot of those books. I sell some books in colleges once in a while. Once in a while I get a letter from a student or a professor saying, "Oh yeah, we just got 40 of them for whatever." So that's all good. But so when somebody writes a book like The Underground Railroad, I guarantee you he's going on NPR so he can get into the colleges. Ta-Nehisi Coates has a book. It's about a fictional letter he wrote to his real-life son. That book is going crazy in the colleges. And the colleges are going crazy about studying white racism and how everybody's a racist and how these black people are relentless victims. I just don't see the Republicans recognizing this. And I just don't see them being ready when, over the next 90 days, the Democrats really ramp up the whole racial grievance thing. They have so many eager allies in the media to talk about this whole racial grievance thing. And I would hate to see Trump and his buddies just spend the next 90 days walk around cleaning up after their mess going, "Oh no, we're not a racist." So I don't have any solutions. I'm just saying I don't see anything really here that we haven't been done before. If somebody wants to tell me that they know a lot of people in like, I know somebody that's the president of a union, about 5,000 members. It's has to do with transportations and buses and trains. Probably most of the unions. He's the president, or was the president. Now probably, I don't know, probably most of the members are black. He tells me he's surprised how many of the members of his union are going to vote for Trump. So maybe all this is working, and it doesn't, you don't have to change the numbers that much. I mean, black people vote 95% for Democrats. They crank that down to 80%. That will be an earthquake. That will change the world. I mean, if anybody can do that, it's Trump. So I'm not sitting here going, well, Trump should say this, Trump should say that. No. Trump's doing just fine with that good old Colin whispering in his ears what to say. Because I'm not really concerned with how he gets elected or not. Okay? I'm concerned with just telling you guys the truth about the implications of everything he says when he starts talking about race and violence and this enormous level of black dysfunction in this country. So I'm just trying to be an observer. You don't need me to be a cheerleader. You just kind of need me to, in the best of all possible worlds, just kind of tell you, what's really what's below these speeches. I've written a lot of these speeches. I've never written a speech for a presidential candidate. I've written a lot of speeches. I've written a lot of columns. Mayors, senators. Did I ever write a speech for a governor? Let me think. No governors. I don't think. But a lot of them. And I've written in a newspaper. I've ghostwritten newspaper columns when newspaper people get sick. My buddy was a national columnist. He got sick. I went to see him in the hospital. I said, "What are you going to do about your column?" He said, "Well, I'm just gonna take a hiatus for a couple weeks." I said, "No, I don't trust those people that run your column. I don't trust any of them to give you a hiatus. If you disappear for a couple weeks, then you disappear." So I said, just let me write it. I'll write it. And I of course wrote it for him, and I haven't stopped letting him forget that good old Collins column I've written under his name got a hell of a lot more reaction than his column. Bam. So anyway, I wish Mr. Trump well. I know what he's trying to do. I wish, I see Sheriff Clark up in Milwaukee is, trying to give him some encouragement. And, if he's not one of the good guys, then there are no good guys. It's weird that we have to have a guy running for president can make news by going into a city and saying how much he likes cops. I mean, you think about, the cliche, by now it's the thin blue line, right? The cops are the thin blue line that separate us from the criminals and the anarchists. Man, think about how much that blue line has changed. Think about how much it has moved to the point where if you like a cop, you kind of have to explain to people why you like it. I mean, the default position now is almost like, oh yeah, the cops, they're arresting all those black people, putting them in jail for no reason whatsoever. Oh yeah, I get that. Everybody knows that. When the opposite is true, when cops are the victims of racial abuse every day. So that's the world these guys are living in. Not just Trump, but all of his buddies, all, Reince Priebus, all the guys running for Senate. And they're all going to get hammered with this. I mean, think about all the guys running for president. Think about Rand Paul. Rand Paul was going around doing the critical race theory thing, the black victimization thing. He went, he went to the NAACP convention to tell them that he was one of them. He was down with the cause and got to get all these black people out of prison because they're in there for no good reason whatsoever. There's Marco Rubio. I could still see him on a couple occasions on the Megyn Kelly show telling him how much, that Black Lives Matter had a valid point because he had a friend who's been pulled over by police before, a black friend. I think of John Kasich doing the same thing. I mean, all those guys. The only one I really didn't see come out and try to do some pandering at some point was Cruz. Everybody else was trying to get on, the down with the cause train. But here's something interesting that's happening as the Black Lives Matter crowd, as they kind of splashed onto the scene and got really huge, and there's still a huge presence in the minds of lots and lots of reporters. They're kind of raising the stakes. They're raising the bar. They're the ones who are saying that, white people are committing crimes on black people, and and cops are always wrong. Well, this puts lots and lots of reporters, and it puts a lot of just regular old people in kind of a conundrum. It's like, because every day they're seeing the opposite of that. They're seeing black criminality wildly out of proportion. Reporters see it. I mean, even they can't ignore it sometimes. I swear I'm starting to see more and more people freely acknowledge that when, the people in the crime, committing these crimes are black. I mean, there's a couple people. There's still a lot of people doing the vague description. Still a lot of people pretending it doesn't matter. More and more people. I just read the story this morning out of Gastonia, North Carolina. 62-year-old dude was in his house. Boom. Two black people come in and kill him. Maybe they took a few things. I don't know that a year or two ago we would have seen that. I know that a year or two ago we would not have seen in the local TV station, in the website, saying, "Oh yeah, the suspects were black." So the Black Lives Matter crowd has raised the ante, and everybody else is going. I mean, I'm not talking about the 20% of the people who are in total denial about everything about racial violence, but there's another 50% there in the middle, 30, 40, 50%, who are kind of open to it, but they're just not. They don't feel safe talking about it. Well, it seems like the environment now is more open than ever for people to point out that there is a lot of black dysfunction, there is a lot of black criminality, there's a lot of black on white crime, and a lot of people are just not paying attention to it. Now, even as I say that, I'm still thinking of all the stories we've done over the last month or two about people who get fired for telling the truth about black violence. Just yesterday in Baltimore, I think I have a story on it coming out in the next couple minutes on this channel. It's probably already out. A lieutenant in the Baltimore Police Department, one of the muckety-mucks in the the Fraternal Order of Police, their union, he sent an email to all of his members saying, "Hey, Black Lives Matter people are a bunch of thugs." He called them thugs. He got suspended. The newspaper went to the local, black lawyer, and he goes, "Well, this is really bad because we have to restore the trust that is broken between law enforcement and the community." No, what he really says is there's a lot of people in Baltimore who don't get caught when they commit crimes. So that's the world we're living in. And I just think it's a lot different than the world that I'm hearing in this speech. My only hope is, like every other one of my political prognostications for the last 8 million years, I'm 100% wrong. Until then, I hope if you're a cop or if you have a job that's with a slightly public face, I hope you don't do anything to make the black kids angry.